Alright, hello everyone. Today I have another lighting conversion project. So this is one of the flood modules from a Soundoff Pinnacle Interior light bar. This one is actually specifically PEPL 8WM1B, a classic. Um, so yeah, this is a pretty nice low profile light bar. That's pretty high output, but the problem is red and blue lights. Only two of them are white, which are the takedowns. And the desired outcome for this is just to have a solid burn white light bar that's higher quality than those, those like $400 ish 52-inch curved light bars. This one is going to be a much higher quality design, much better electronics in it, lower profile, and still really nice and bright as a good floodlight for dirt roads and, stuff like that. So I'm going to show you how to swap out the lights. Now, the actual lights that this uses, I believe they're Philips Lumileds Luxion. I'll put the exact part number on the screen for what I'm using. And from DigiKey, getting replacement lights of this specific kind would actually cost, for enough to do the whole light bar and have like one or two spares, it would actually cost I think it was $155 Canadian, and that's before shipping and taxes. That might have had taxes included actually, but $155, and that's only for like 48 or something of the LEDs. I think that way I had some spares to replace all six in each of the, or no, sorry. So it would be, six LEDs in each of the 8 modules, and I wanted like 3 or 4 spares in case I messed up. That was going to be like $155 with shipping, maybe taxes on top. Absolutely ridiculous. But I searched on eBay and I happened to find a seller in Australia. And I guess they had some leftovers from a pick and place machine, but I'm not really sure because they came in a sealed anti-static bag. But the picture was of them on a reel showing the right part number. But I actually got not just that, but a whole other row, 100 of these lights for about $100 Canadian shipped. So that saved me like $50-$60 at least on the cost of the conversion of the lights, which is really good. So I figure I will show you how to swap it out. So obviously first we need to remove this lens. And unlike the Whelen 500 series, this does not use a aluminum circuit board. This uses a regular fiberglass one with an adhesive pad on the back. But it actually pops off really quite nice and easily. So I'll take just like a flathead screwdriver or something, ideally a bit thinner. And you really just have to start it at one corner. There we go. And that thermal pad is fairly intact. And the circuit board pops off quite nicely. It's labeled fairly well with a little blue dot on there. And it's got, of course, 6 of these lights on there. So the thing is, these lights are different to those older style. I believe these ones are actually not quite as powerful as the ones that I bought. I think these might be like a less intense, less power drawing light. So I think these ones that I'm buying are actually an upgrade. So I'm going to replace the white modules as well. I'm really hoping to fix the exposure. There we go. So I have my hot air station set to 320 degrees, and we're just going to first start by taking those all off. And I'm going to be saving them because these are expensive lights. These are like $2 and some cents each. Unfortunately, I already lost one of the blue ones, which is annoying. Chances of using them again are rare, but nice to keep them on hand, so I'm hoping not to lose any more. So we're just going to start out by removing all of the original 6 here. And so again, just 230 degrees on quite a large tip. And probably about halfway on the hot air station. Just because we don't have to worry about it blowing them away. I know you want to get them off fairly quick. That should still be good. So these boards are split up into 2 halves. So they have a control board in them normally that I'm going to be removing because I don't need any strobing functions. I'm just going to be using some buck converters to step the 12, 13 volts down to 9 volts for each side, or maybe 10. I did try with 10 and it's a nice increase in brightness, and I believe since my LEDs are higher spec, they should be able to handle it just fine. But these boards do have a small regulator or 2 on them from what I recall, and the LEDs are powered with, I believe it was around 2.3 volts each. And the LEDs that I bought, those are rated up to 2.9 to 3.2 volts, I think, maximum. But there's going to be diminishing returns, so I think 10 volts is quite a nice sort of balance. And so you can see, unlike the Whelen 500 series, these come off a lot nicer, and you don't have to worry about an epoxy on them. Alright, so that is the LEDs all removed. And I'll actually bring one into focus, hopefully. So you can see, there you go, you can make out the actual LED die in there. And what I'll do is pop out another 6 of these, and you'll see there's actually a noticeable difference. Now the color difference is because it's a white LED, so they have the phosphor instead. But if it'll focus, you can see, even with that lens, the square part of the die, you can see the distortion a little bit, seems to be quite a lot larger. It seems to take up a lot more of that sort of like a gel PCB mounted lens. It seems to fill up the whole thing. Once I have the white one apart, I can compare, but I believe this is even larger than the white one. So it makes for more light output, so it must be, I don't know, it must be pretty good. So now I'm just going to go ahead and start placing these down. Now one thing is that this board doesn't have much surface tension on it, or much solder on it, so we aren't quite able to take advantage of surface tension as much as we would on some boards that have a bit more solder on them. You could always add some solder on there, but they seem to stick on there pretty handily on their own. I'm also, once I actually had my hands on these, I'm seeing why these are sort of in that, over $2 each range per LED. Because, there is that gel step of manufacturing on there. I think they're on a ceramic substrate. Looking at the substrate, I think it's a ceramic. And it's also got gold-plated contacts on the back. But you can see that substrate, I believe it is ceramic. And that would make sense to deal with all the heat coming out from one of these, because these can draw quite a lot of current. So now I have my heat gun turned down. I'll do it quite low, actually. Same temperature, but the fan speed is way down. I was sort of at 5 before, and now I'm at 1.5, and that's on a Sigma R700 hot air station. But that's the same as most of the generic ones, so. Fun fact, that hot air station is the only thing I've ever bought with YouTube money before. They had a little bit, and then they said that, they put those new requirements in for subscribers and view hours and stuff for monetization, so I was able to treat myself to a cheap soldering or hot air station, which has done me quite well, but Yeah, that's not going to happen again. See, I'm just trying to be careful and not blow these out of the way, although it's still happening a bit. So you do see the effects of surface tension a bit on the larger pad, which is underneath the actual diode. And that's the heatsink one, and then the other two on this side are just for the actual electrical conductivity. So you do get a little bit of assistance from surface tension, but not a whole lot. Alright, so I'm going to let those cool, and I'm going to go grab a power supply. Alright, so that is our two sides of the light working nicely. I don't know if you'll be able to tell how bright they are on the screen here, but let me grab the other one that I did. So I'll need some longer wires for this one, for all of them, to connect the buck converters, but yeah, I mean, the lens on these things, this lights up a whole yard. This thing is like insanely bright. I'm not going to look at it because it's probably going to hurt my eyes, especially at this range. But there you go. Let's. So the lenses are quite nice. If I turn it off, oh, the phone's actually compensating quite well for the exposure. But you can see if I lock the exposure, yeah, it's not quite that bright on camera. It's one of those things that's hard to adjust for. Me. That's pretty realistic right there. That's about. That right there is about how bright it actually looks like to my eyes. So. Anyways, yeah, so we can go ahead and disconnect this. And all that's involved in putting it back together is taking the circuit board back onto the PCB, taking the lens assembly back on, and just trying to make sure that it's lined up. There's a little bit of wiggle room in the placement of the lights. Alright, and then all you have to do is screw that back down into place. And once you actually tighten them both down, the circuit board actually sticks back down to the aluminum quite well. So it still does have quite a lot of thermal conduction. This heat sinks quite nicely. And so since I'm converting this with higher capacity LEDs, I'm going to also apply some thermal paste onto this, where it mounts onto the steel powder-coated frame, just to try and help a bit with the heat conduction. That way, these can run full blast without risking overheating too much. So I won't put this one all the way together because I'm going to have to put some better wires onto this and this one. But yeah, only 6 more of these to go. 2 of them are the takedown with a different style lens. I'll show you one of those. So this is the takedown style lens, and it's made to be a more focused, farther punching out design. From what I can tell, even these spread ones go pretty far. These ones will go farther, obviously, so I might try and get 4 more of these lenses. If someone who is watching this happens to know and happens to have spare lenses of these, I wouldn't mind grabbing some more, and then I could just test to see what works better for my use case. I did want sort of flood side illumination on this, but since there's a slight curve to it, these takedown modules, the lenses on them might be pretty good anyways. So I figured I would also show just installing them in the light bar since I'm doing it differently from original. So you might have noticed that I kept the stock connector on there, but I just soldered onto the extra pins on the back. That's because I pulled the original controller and wiring out, but I'm going to keep it, just because It might come in handy at some point. At some point, I might revert this thing to its original colors and sell it. I might turn it into all amber. Who knows? So it's not going to have any of the original control electronics in it. So lots of room for a couple buck converters. So I've taken some rubbing alcohol and cleaned it all off, mostly. But then I'm going to give it a couple more hits. So we'll be installing in that side, just because I don't have much wire right now, so I'm doing the longest lengths first. Probably overkill, but whatever. So I'm still working on organizing. It was good for a while, and I was like, oh good, I can make videos, and then some stuff came in for other projects, and then it turned into a mess. So, fresh rubbing alcohol on there, as well as on here. Then, I happen to have a little bit of thermal compound. Yeah, so it's just MX2, it's nothing too fancy. I have a small tube of it here. And I'm just going to, I mean, this might be way overkill. Like, you know, maybe it doesn't need this amount of heat sinking whatsoever, but I figure it's worth a little bit. So I'm not going overkill, you know, I'm just putting a little bit that should hopefully spread out fairly nicely. And just help conduct some heat to this. I mean, I know it's powder coated and that's not ideal, and I could like sand that away and stuff, but I think it should still help. So the thermal paste helps kind of hold that in place. And I just take a couple of these nylocks, and I'll tighten them back down. I'll just try not to move the thing too much. Again, like air bubbles in the thermal paste, probably not a big deal on something like this. A CPU much more so. But then when you also think about it, when you look at the coating, this powder coating, it's very rough, so the thermal paste probably will actually help. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, you can see a little bit of squeeze out on that one. No, and on that one too. So there's a little bit of squeeze out, so I could have done slightly less. But then that means there should be a nice even coat of thermal paste in there. And I'll probably get 2 buck converters, wire them up left and right. So yeah, just 6 more of these to do. Stick them all wired up and whatnot, nice and tidy. And this should be a pretty nice light bar that's much higher quality than those Princess Auto Harbor Freight random store ones. It might not be as bright. I'm honestly not too sure how it'll compare. It would be interesting. I mean, they've got double the LEDs, but they're also probably not the same quality of LEDs. These are genuine, you know, these are genuine parts. Same as you would get off DigiKey. I just found a deal on them, so these probably put out more light than those other ones. So, yeah, that's going to be quite nice when it's all done. Alright, so I came to an area that, I mean, like a dark road is like not great for context, especially with like a camera comparing light and stuff. But I came out to an area with some really bright overhead lights that's quite well lit, that way I can just sort of demonstrate. So my buck converters are coming in tomorrow by like 9 p.m. So I'm still using the power supply off of an inverter, but I have it all wired up. And so you can just see that's all on, and we'll just aim that direction. Okay, so it doesn't punch out quite as far as I was thinking. Maybe going down a dark road is better. But you can see it on those sheds out there. It's not like lighting up the trees or anything. So that's probably due to only having 2 of the modules that actually punch out further, and the rest of them are spread. Hang on, let's go above the camera.
I think having overhead lighting actually isn't helping. So another thing is that this is going to be behind like windshield tint and stuff. So who knows how that's going to affect it. So I'm going to go and try and find a pitch black area just for the heck of it. But yeah, it's not going quite as far as I was hoping. Does seem like it's going to be more of a close range thing, unfortunately, but oh well. Okay, so I'm on a dead stretch of like road with trees on either side, and this is kind of where I was thinking of this thing being useful more anyways, maybe in like narrow sections of woods where deer and stuff can jump out, or I was hoping kind of into the ditch, like illumination. Maybe with the takedown lenses on all of them that would work, but we'll go ahead and give it a test here. Also, again, yeah, like this power supply is limited current-wise with this thing, so it will be brighter, but it will also be behind a windshield, so. Okay, yeah, in a dark area like this, you probably can't see, but it does go quite a ways down. And if we go ahead and just aim the other way where there is not a bunch of trees and stuff on either side. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that actually. I'll probably have to crank up the exposure afterwards. It does seem like it has a bit of like top spread actually, so a slight tilt down might help depending on how far down you want it to light up, but that is actually having quite a good effect really far down. So I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, so hopefully if anyone else wants to do this video was helpful with the part number for those lights and whatnot.